A family secret and an inherited gift are passed on to this man as soon as he turns 21. What will he do when he discovers that he himself is a walking time machine? Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, let's do a recap and a review of a British science fantasy and comedy drama movie called About Time. Let's check it out.
In a humble family house right beside the ocean, Tim lives with his family. They are an odd family with this distinct strangeness to them. Nevertheless, they are a loving family to one another. Tim, the eldest son of the family, is rather an awkward person when it comes to love. During their annual New Year's Eve party, rather than kissing the only woman that showed interest in him, he just politely shook her hand. While Katie, his younger sister, finds love in Jimmy, Tim was just hungover the next day, still single and awkward as ever. The next day, while he regrets the events that happened during the New Year's Eve party, his father calls for him to talk. James, Tim's dad, unravels the secret of the men in their family. They can travel back in time, but only during moments they have lived in and experienced. Tim couldn't believe it at first, so as a test run, he decides to go back to the New Year's Eve party. To do this, he only needs to go to a dark place, clench his fist, and think of the time when he wants to go back. He does this with little to no hopes of it working, but to his surprise, he is back in time. He makes up for the little things he regretted doing and not doing that day, including finally having the guts to kiss the woman who was interested in him. When he goes back to the current time, he asks James a lot of questions and learns that Mary, his mother, doesn't know about it, and he cannot use this ability to have unlimited money. Anyhow, Tim only decides to use this ability to get a girlfriend. That summer, he had an opportunity to use it. Charlotte, Jimmy's cousin, will be staying with them for 2 whole months. After a series of trials and errors by going back and forth in time to win her heart, Charlotte never really liked him back.
He then realizes the sad truth that time travel cannot make someone fall in love with you. He watches his first love leave right before his eyes.
Eventually, it was his time to leave home and venture into the big city of London to pursue his career as a lawyer. He is to live with James's acquaintance, Harry, an uncongenial and antisocial playwright. Their first meeting is not the best, but they learn to live with each other eventually and became friends. He also meets Rory, a clumsy colleague who also becomes his close friend. 6 months went by and Tim never got to find love. That is about to change when Jay, his loud and immature childhood/best friend, invites him on a double date in a restaurant where guests are served in total darkness. There he meets Mary and their chemistry is off the charts. Jimmy thinks he's found true love because Mary is beautiful and just his type. Luckily, she gives him her number so they can meet again. Contented with this progress, Tim goes home only to find Harry upset because the opening night of the play he had planned for a long time is ruined because an actor forgot his lines. Knowing he can help him, Tim goes back in time and fixes everything by reminding the actors to go through their lines and showing placards with the foreign lines backstage. The play eventually becomes a success, however, causes a small mishap in his life. The back and forth time travels that he had done alters his own past. In his current time, Mary and him never really got to meet that night. Remembering that Mary had a distinct fondness for Kate Moss, Tim goes to a Kate Moss exhibition where he waits for her to come. He only got to meet her again a week later.
His attempt to act familiar with Mary weirds her out because to her, they're total strangers. He also tries to win her favor back by mentioning the things they talked about the night they met. However, to his disappointment, Mary already has a boyfriend.
After discovering the exact place and time where Mary meets her boyfriend, Tim travels back in time and pursues Mary once again. There is no denying that they have chemistry and are bound to fall in love. They really just need to have the time in their hands, and fortunately, Tim does. That night, they make love. Tim goes back and forth in time to make a perfect first night. After that, they started their relationship with each other. Everything is going well since Tim gets to meet her parents and moves in with her. On a Saturday night, since Mary doesn't want to occupy him, Tim watches a play with Rory. There he sees his first love, Charlotte. He goes to greet her only to mess it up again and again until he decides not to, because it's better that he just saves himself from humiliation. However, Charlotte still recognizes him from afar and invites him out for a dinner. Seeing that his first love is showing interest in him, Tim plays along and walks her back to her apartment. Nevertheless, when Charlotte becomes suggestive and invites him inside for an intimate time, Tim can only think of Mary and Mary alone. He leaves Charlotte hanging and hurriedly goes back to their apartment to ask Mary for her hand in marriage. He even uses time travel to make the proposal tailored to perfection according to Mary's preferences. They go back to Tim's family home to announce their marriage and that Mary is carrying their first child. They had their wedding in the midst of a storm and had the messiest reception. However, both of them would not have it any other way. Still, Tim couldn't help it and goes back in time because of the ridiculous best men speeches he had from Rory, Harry, and Jay. Tim would never abuse his gift gift of time travel, but he couldn't help but use it whenever moments in his life don't go as planned. Here we see a glimpse of Katie's unhappy relationship with Jimmy. However, when Posey, their first child, comes into the world, Tim stops traveling back in time. To him, every moment in life has become delightful to live in. Despite these happy changes in Tim's life, Katie's life has gone wrong. She starts drinking more and becomes less and less happy with her relationship with Jimmy. On her way to Posey's first birthday, Katie drunkenly crashes her car and was hospitalized for several injuries. Heartbroken to see her only sister suffering, Tim decides to go back once again in time and fetched her. However, he was not satisfied and wants to change her life, starting from the moment she meets Jimmy.
Together with Katie, who was a bit skeptical about her brother's ability to time travel, they go back to the night of New Year's Eve, when she then realizes that Jimmy will eventually just fall in love with anyone that night, and she herself was not particularly all that special. She punches him right in the face as her brother proudly watches on.
When they get back to the present, much to their surprise, Katie ended up in a loving and healthy relationship with Jay, Tim's tactless and loud best friend. Timmy couldn't believe his eyes because Jay is the last person that he could think of that would be in a happy relationship with his sister. But once he sees that Jay is truly changed and is truly in love with her, he accepts this change in her life. Proud of this, he hurriedly comes back to London with his family, only to realize that Posey no longer exists and finds an unfamiliar baby boy who is apparently now his son. He goes to James to ask him what happened, and James tells him that this is one of the consequences of time traveling. Once he makes the tiniest change in his life before the conception of his child, he cannot expect the same baby, in this case Posey, will be conceived. Since Tim cannot live with his life without Posey, he goes back in time to undo the changes he made in his sister's life. He lets Jimmy and Katie meet and all the events that led to the car crash because that will ensure Posey's birth. He only watches his sister on the hospital bed with Mary, still heartbroken by the fact that he lost the opportunity to turn her life around. With Mary, he helps Katie make the changes in her life on her own, such as breaking up with Jimmy and changing her drinking habits. He even sets her up with Jay, as he had seen in an alternate reality that made her very happy. While Tim watches Posey, he asks Mary to have another child. Even if Mary was hesitant at first, their second child is born. While Tim and Mary are fighting over a small thing as parents, they receive the news that James is diagnosed with terminal cancer and it's gotten very bad. They hurriedly went back home and everyone is sullen because James only has a few weeks to live. Tim couldn't believe it because with the ability to time travel, he thought James could easily fix it, but apparently it's not the case. It has never been the case. James tells him about the two-part plan of his secret formula for happiness. First, Tim needs to live his life ordinarily and just like everyone else. There it shows Tim having a really bad day because he is not living in the moment. He is full of tension and not noticing how sweet and kind the world can be to someone. As for the second part of the plan, James tells Tim to live every day again, almost exactly the same, but this time noticing every single thing that's happening to him at the moment.
For the second time, Tim lives out the same day, but this time he's carefree. He's living in the moment. He comforts Rory when he got scolded by their boss. He smiles at the sweetest cashier, relieves himself of the tension, and congratulates his defendant in court while they celebrate the win.
His father had taught him how beautiful life can be. You just have to live in the moment. You do not need to continuously go back and forth to truly enjoy life in all its glory. However, there are some days when Tim thinks he could only go through it once. That day is the day when James passed away. Together with his family, Tim comes back to their family home to go through the ceremony and burial. Before the burial, Tim goes back in time to talk with his father and watch him read his book. After that, he goes back to the present time to continue with the burial. When they returned home, Mary opens up about wanting to have a third child. As Mary tries to convince Tim, he tries to hold it off because conceiving another child means he cannot go back and see his father again. Once he does, the same disaster that happened with Posey might happen again to their third child. However, seeing that Mary looks really happy just thinking about it, he finally agrees. On the day that Mary is expecting to finally give birth to their third child, Tim travels back in time to see his father for one last time. Together, they played tennis and he tells him about their baby. They spend their last moments together by going back to Tim's childhood and walking together to the beach. They look at the vast ocean and enjoy the remaining time with each other. Tim goes back to the present time for the birth of his son. Katie also becomes happy again and builds her family with Jay when she became a mother herself. His mother, despite the loss of her love, learns to enjoy life again with her brother, Uncle Desmond, who will never leave her side. Tim goes back to being the father of his 3 wonderful kids and the husband of the most beautiful woman in his eyes. Despite the grief, the sadness of James' passing, and everything they've been through, things went back to normal eventually.
About Time teaches us that there is and always will be something beautiful about the passing of time and us. Just standing between it and living in every single moment. This movie will make you laugh, and you'll also relate to Tim's awkwardness, but you'll also cry and remember all the good days you took for granted. This is a must-watch, especially now since it's so easy to get caught up with the never-ending problems and drama in our world. We really forget to take notice of the beauty and kindness of the people surrounding us. It literally shows us, YOLO, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Please subscribe to our channel to be notified when we upload, and don't forget to suggest some movies that you want us to recap in the future in the comments down below.